Can you just tell us a little bit about what happened to your daughter?
Uh, Hi, good morning, Jane. Thanks for having me on this morning on World Sepsis Day. Yes, Maude was our two and a half year old daughter who became ill in the lead up to Christmas of 2011, and she displayed flu-like symptoms and croup, I suppose. A parent might recognise it as croup, but I was worried that it had gone to her chest, and we took her into a local A&E paediatric department in a local hospital, and she was looked at and discharged. And then her condition worsened, and we took her in again. And then this was on New Year's Day in 2010, and she was discharged again. There she is there with my wife Clara, and she was discharged again, and then sadly she passed away in the night, and we found her on New Year's Day. So in her cot. So yes, and we didn't know why she had died. I think that's something that's worth mentioning, because there's been. We may talk about this, but I know that Mary Mills, whose daughter Martha died recently, was talking about Martha's rule about trying to get a second opinion. Listening to her again, there is an amount of confusion and devastation, obviously, but it is confusing because one minute your child is fine, and within such a sepsis is to diagnose and treat, and also to recognise it. I suppose I am best qualified to say that me and my wife and my family and other families, that it is an incredibly cruel condition.
And awfully cruel, and it's such a desperately hard tale to hear. And you talk about how hard it is to diagnose. I mean, it's hard for doctors, isn't it? And, why do you think it's so hard for doctors to spot this?
It is hard for doctors, and I think that's really important to say, that healthcare professionals and the ones that I talk to and work with are as concerned and as desperate to improve care, but they are, underfunded, and frankly, and the NHS has terrible funding problems, and this is the front line, and this is what's happening. And you talked about the numbers. We reckon there's about 12,000 preventable deaths. It's nasty because a sepsis lurks behind presenting symptoms. So in Maude's case, there was a chest infection, croup, and you think, well, let's treat that. That's what it is. And then you're focusing in on that, when actually sepsis works by being masked by those presenting symptoms, and starts to close organs down. The fever gets worse, things get worse. And you think, why is this happening? And unless you rule it out straight away and keep an eye on it, is sepsis present? Could it be sepsis? That's something we always say, that at the UK Sepsis Trust, that we always say to parents: ask anyone along the healthcare pathway that you're, regrettably involved in. Ask anyone at any time, could this be sepsis? And of course, as Mary has said, ask for a second opinion. That's why it's so nasty. And also, if it doesn't take your life, it will alter your organs and the way they work, and often people lose limbs because of circulatory issues. So it's a particularly nasty thing. So knowing those symptoms is crucial, and knowing if it's an infant or a child, saying to the doctor, my child just doesn't feel right. There's something wrong. Could it be sepsis? But essentially, those things are, pale skin and cold to the touch, not passing urine for 24 hours, pale skin, extreme shivering. You feel like you're going to die. Those, I think, 5 of the 6 symptoms. So, but all those symptoms are available on the UK Sepsis website. But I also would say that the whole of the way that we diagnose infants, the way we look at them when they're presented in A&E and also in GP practices, needs really strong looking at. If you're thinking that those numbers are extraordinary, aren't they, that you mentioned, 250,000 cases, that one wants to say it's almost a healthcare emergency, isn't it? In a way, that things that are 12,000 preventable deaths is a big number. And if you think about in Switzerland, I know they've just thrown money at trying to develop better diagnosis and treatment of sepsis. So we have a lot to do. I also just have to mention that the Iceland, the company and their charitable foundation has really supported us and got behind us and funded lots of these projects. So I feel I have to mention them, and it's a big thank you. They've continued to support us. But there is so much to be done. And just to say that our documentary, Clara, and our documentary in memory of Maude is available on, you can see it on the ITV hub, and that shows you what happened to Maude, sadly, and gives you more background on what happened. But when that documentary was transmitted, in the same week, in our local hospital, and one of many, many cases, it has to be said, a young boy called Daniel lost his life with his mother saying, "I think he's got sepsis." And she was a trained doctor, now a pharmacist from abroad, now working as a pharmacist. And yet, because of the system of care, it was too late. By the time the consultants saw Daniel, sepsis had taken hold and it was too late. So obviously something wasn't right there, and that there's been, they're looking at that hospital within that trust. So what we can do as individuals and parents and work colleagues, of course, is to know those signs and tell as many people as possible.
Well, that's what you've certainly done today, Jason. Sorry to cut in there, but
I know, sorry.
you know, you've done a huge amount to raise awareness, and hopefully, you know, as a result of that and the fact it's World Sepsis Day, people will be more aware of those symptoms and will know what to do. Jason, thanks very much for coming on and talking to us about Maude. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.